Aloha kakao and welcome, and thank you for attending the 2020 Kauai Honganji Council seminar. My name is Shakuart Kaufman, and I shall be your MC today. The Reverend Tomo Hojo will be our engineer, and Reverend Mieko Majima will be handling the questions. There will be a question and answer segments every 30 minutes during and after the lecture. If you wish to submit a question, please use the Q&A icon on your screen. Due to time constrictions, Reverend Tanaka might not be able to respond to all of your questions, but I'm sure he'll do the very best he can. Now, allow me to introduce Reverend Tanaka. Reverend Dr. Kenneth Kenshin Tanaka grew up and attended Dharma school at the Mountain View Buddhist Temple. While an active member of the YBA, Young Buddhist Association, he aspired to study Buddhism, which he did at Stanford University, where he received his BA. He continued his studies for a period at the Thai Temple and the Institute of Buddhist Studies in Berkeley, California, where he received his MA. Dr. Tanaka received his PhD from the University of California at Berkeley. Reverend Tanaka has served as Associate Professor and Assistant Dean at the Institute of Buddhist Studies for 10 years and as a resident priest at the Southern Alameda County Buddhist Church in California for 3 years. Reverend Tanaka has taught at Musashino University in Tokyo, Japan, as a professor of Buddhist studies for 20 years. He is currently serving as chairman of the editorial committee for the Chinese Buddhist Canon English Translation Project, sponsored by the Society for the Promotion of Buddhism, BDK. He has recently been appointed as adjunct researcher at the Honganji Comprehensive Research Center. His publications include Dawn of Chinese Pure Land Buddhist Doctrine, Ocean, An Introduction to Jodo Shinshu Buddhism in America, Faces of Buddhism in America, Buddhism on Air, a kaleidoscope of a growing religion. He has edited Chie no Ushio, Shinran no Chie, Shutaise and Shakase, which when translated means tide of wisdom, Shinran's wisdom, subjectivity, and social dimension. Reverend Tanaka's books have been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Portuguese. I will now invite Mrs. Saiki, who is the president of the Kauai Honganji Council, to give her welcome address.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the 2020 Nembutsu Seminar, sponsored by the Kauai Honganji Council, comprised of the Kapa Honganji Mission, the Lihui Honganji Mission, and the West Kauai Honganji Mission. It is a great honor to have Reverend Dr. Kenneth Tanaka as the featured speaker for today's seminar. We hope that you will have a greater understanding of the role that Shin Buddhism plays in bringing about peace and harmonious relationships in our daily lives. Please continue to be vigilant and stay safe and healthy. And thank you for joining us today.
On behalf of the Kauai Honganji Council, I would like to welcome the Reverend Dr. Kenneth Kenshin Tanaka. Sensei, if you'd be so kind.
Okay, I hope you can hear me. Good morning here. Good afternoon in Kauai. We are about almost 20 hours ahead of you. So I come from Tokyo, where I have been living for the past 20 years. Retired 3 years ago, and but almost just as busy in many of my activities. So it's great to be here. I wanted to say see you, but unfortunately I cannot see you except for the ministers and the chairperson, the head of the Kauai Council. Was it Ms. Saiki? Yeah, and so I prefer that actually to be able to see your faces, but since I cannot, I'll do the best I can. If you notice that I'm not wearing an earring, the white on my ear is it's a new they call it AirPods, and it's a microphone and earphone in one set, and which I just started using last night. So this is the first time I'm using it for this kind of audience, and it should make my voice a little bit more clear. And so it's again a privilege, and to be able to share my thoughts with you. I was in Kauai 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, and I had promised to come back in 2 years, which would have been this summer. But you know, given the COVID situation, I had to cancel my trip, and I was glad and happy when Reverend Kaufman invited me to the seminar, which then will allow me to share what I wanted to share had I been able to go to Hawaii this summer, to actually introduce my newest book called Jewels. And I will talk about that today. So today we have 2 hours, a little less than 2 hours now, but I would like to speak for about half an hour and then break for question and answer. I think it's better that way rather than going 1.5 hours and leaving the last 30 minutes for question and answer. So I have a lot of material that I want to share under the overall title of the essence and practice of Jodo Shinshu towards a happy and peaceful life. Let me just, I will share my first PowerPoint. Okay, so the first, I have 3 PowerPoints that I wanted to put together under the overall theme. And much of it you may think is not Shinshu per se. Shin Buddhism is part of Buddhism, of course, but Shin Buddhism encompasses other forms of Buddhism. It's like, you know, Shin Buddhism is like a flower on a tree. You have a tree, you have the trunk, and then major branches going out. And then from the branches, there will be flowers, like the beautiful flowers that I see in Hawaii. So think of Shinshu as a flower. But you cannot have the flower without the trunk or the branches. So we cannot talk only about the flower, but we have to talk about the trunk and the branches. And another part of this analogy, which I enjoyed, which Bishop Eric Matsumoto of your Honganji mission shared with me, which was that Shinshu is like a low-hanging fruit. Well, he's using fruit, I'm using flower. But, that rather than getting to the flower or fruit way up on the tree, he says that Shinshu is low-hanging so that we can reach out and touch it even as we stay on the ground. We don't have to climb way up to the top of the tree to get it. So I thought that was a very nice analogy of Shin Buddhism, that you can be yourself living on the ground as lay people, having jobs and work and in the world, but still we can reach up and catch the fruit or the flower because it's hanging low. And so I hope that you can continue to reach up and get a taste of the fruit and the flower. And it does take effort, it's not just hanging back and sitting on the couch. Someone said that Joro Shinshu is like a couch potato Buddhism, couch potato. We're not, we have to also make the effort to reach out and listen to the teachings, read books, listen to not only Buddhism, but other forms of religion to, cultivate ourselves. Okay, so let's go. Well, I want just to share, this is 2.5 years ago, when I visited Kauai, and here's Reverend Art, myself, at this beautiful view. And here with the rest of the ministers. I'm glad to see that all 3 of the ministers are still in Kauai. And so 2 years and a little bit has not changed their assignments. So this view, which all of you know well, has left a very memorable impression on me whenever I think about Kauai. Yeah, I wish I could be there. And here's the visit to Hanapepe when I gave a talk after Lihue. And so I remember this session very well as well. Okay, so I just wanted to reminisce my wonderful trip 2 years ago, and hopefully that many of you are doing well for those who attended this session. And so let's go to, before I start, I asked Reverend Kaufman to, after my talk, to send you, if possible, a questionnaire of my seminar. And I've been doing this recently so that I get a better sense of how you're feeling, what you learned, what you still want to know about. And not that I can answer all the questions, respond to all the questionnaires, but sometimes I do. But mostly it gives me a chance to get to know what's on your mind. And then there is at the bottom of the questionnaire a way to sign up for my Buddhist column, which I promised to send every 3 months, but it's been a little bit longer. But maybe 3 times a year I send my column to my friends in US and also in Japan. So if you can, when you get this questionnaire, fill it out and send it back if you can. It's of course voluntary. Okay, so I want to begin with this diagram, which is so central to knowing Buddhism and Shin Buddhism. And here you have, this is something I have been using quite often. Here's a diagram. It's very simple, but it goes to the heart. The horizontal, this represents the everyday world in which we live, our work, our family, our school, church, temples. This is where we actually live. And it's kind of in a wiggly line because it points to the fact that it is a bumpy road. It doesn't go as we wish, it's up and down. And with a pandemic, we are facing a situation that's quite down for us. However, Buddhism is the vertical dimension. Its vertical dimension is the spiritual dimension, the religious dimension, philosophical dimension, is how we deal with what happens to us. Okay, horizontal is what happens to us. You know, the pandemic, we get it, sometimes we get sick, things don't go our way. But how we deal with it is where Buddhism comes in. It's the vertical dimension. And so the higher you go, the greater understanding of Buddhism you have. You live Buddhism, and which makes you a lot more happier and at peace than in the past. And if you get to the very top, this is what we call Buddhahood. Buddhas are those who have awakened completely to what is true and have overcome gas, greed, anger, and stupidity. But we as Jodo Shinshu, we don't claim to be able to become fully enlightened completely like Shakyamuni Buddha in this life. But that's okay because, well, let's just say halfway is a level called Shinjin. Shinjin often translated what? Faith and trusting heart. And I call it Shinjin awareness or awakening, which is realized in this life. Okay, it's not afterlife, it's in this life. We awaken to greater truth, greater reality, which makes us happier and at more peace than ordinary people. I believe that if you walk the path, the vertical path, or the Dharma, path of Nembutsu, path of Dharma, sincerely and dedicated with dedication for any length of time, you will see results in your life, and that is what is important. So, and now I want to use up here, difficulties are inevitable, but suffering is optional. Now, difficulties happen on the horizontal level. Difficulties are things that don't go your way. You know, pandemic. Nobody likes the pandemic. You know, it's a difficulty. But the suffering, whether you really suffer, that is optional. It's up to you. Okay, so here I just talk about. And now, in terms of what to do on a vertical, I want to first talk about 3 cultivation. I actually talked about this at the recent talk I gave for the Hawaii Honganji, Buddhist Council of Hawaii, comprised of various Buddhist denominations online. So if you had seen that, it's going to be the same talk, but with a little bit of emphasis on Shinshu. Okay, so central to, there are many teachings on the vertical, many teachings that are Buddhist. And the one that I want to talk about today is called 3 cultivations, Sangaku in Japanese. And they are conduct, how you act, and this includes what you say, what you think, what you do. Have you heard that before? You heard in, I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, to say pure and beautiful words, and to do pure and beautiful deeds. That's the conduct here. Settled mind is more like meditation, Nembutsu recitation, it's unlike other religions. Buddhism emphasizes this to a greater degree than other religions, I think. That's why meditation is so big in America, and much of the meditation or mindfulness practice, mindfulness meditation that you hear about, it comes from Buddhism and wisdom. So these three constitute three cultivations. They're all important, but I want to begin with wisdom. Wisdom means seeing things, seeing reality, and and if you were at my talk 2 years ago, I emphasized this, and also I've emphasized this in my writings. But 4 marks are here. These are the 4 marks. If you take any of this seriously and apply it to your life will be a little bit more peaceful and happier. Life is a bumpy road. It's not smooth. So to think that it goes smoothly is not the Buddhist way, but life is up and down. Second is life is interdependent, which a term you hear a lot, and so I don't need to explain too much that nothing happens without causes and conditions that made it happen, or things are interconnected. So it's not the opposite. Life should be mine. You know, our lives it's a culmination of various interdependent connections. And to say that this is mine is because it will lead to much suffering, because you cannot control everything. That's because things happen because of many conditions. Life is impermanent, which is easy to understand. Everything changes. So to kind of stop it and say life should always be the same when things are going well, that will lead to more suffering. But despite the fact that life is a bumpy road, life can be great. It's up to you. It's the vertical dimension. It's how you see life and how you lead your life. And so rather than life is lousy, you know, you don't want to end up thinking that my life was a lousy one. That life, despite all the bumps in the road, life is fundamentally good and can be great. So I take the acronym and BIIG. So think big and don't think small. I used to use this for my students in Japan at the university. When I told them this, at the end of the class, one of the students came up, and they rarely ask questions. So I was really happy to have someone come up and ask questions. And he says, I have a question. So I was really hoping for a great question. And he says, you spelled, I think, big incorrectly. You know, shouldn't it be B-I-G and not B-I-I-G? You have one extra I. And then he said, you have one less L in small. And I said, well, I'm trying to make a point. But anyway, I was happy still that he asked a question. That means he was listening. See, he was. Okay, so I want to go through relatively quickly in relation to the pandemic, how we can apply the teachings of the 4 marks. So we have to, you know, so the first truth is life is a bumpy road. So we have to accept reality, not to say, you know, why is this happening to us? And in a way, I had a little bit of that when it first hit, you know, started getting real serious at the end of February and March. And why is this happening to us? It shouldn't be this way. But, you know, I caught myself and said, Buddhism is always saying that life is a bumpy road. It doesn't go your way. So we need to listen to the experts and see things truly. unfortunately, in the US, you have groups of people who don't want to listen to experts. And that is one of the reasons why America is having such a difficult time. Think about this. Only 4% of the world population, and we have 25% of the world's death due to this pandemic. So we're certainly not doing well. I mean, so it's because some of us are not seeing things correctly. Second teaching, interdependent. Think of the others, especially the vulnerables. So one of the reasons why some people don't put on the mask is because they feel like, well, I'm okay. It doesn't, I'm young, and even if I catch it, it's nothing gonna affect me. But you're forgetting the important part, that the mask helps to prevent other people who are more vulnerable to catch this dreadful disease. So we have to have, things more interdependently. One other thing is, needless to say, interdependent means that it's not always a good thing. Because the world is interdependent, the entire world was infected from a disease that started in Wuhan, China, because of the interconnectedness. So interdependent means can be bad sometimes, but this is the reality. We have to understand the reality. So we live in an interdependent world, and now that the vaccine is here, we cannot say, well, just in the rich countries will get it, and the poorer countries should get it much, much later, if at all. That will not be the Buddhist way, because if everyone does not become vaccinated, then we will still be vulnerable. That unless everyone is happy, we cannot be happy. It's that kind of thinking. That is the basic Buddhist perspective. So we have to share some of the vaccine on almost equal basis. Impermanent, the third of the Four Noble Truths. Everything changes. So when the pandemic hit, we say, this is not normal. This is not normal. But actually, this is life. Things like this have been going on for eons and centuries. We heard about the plague and this kind of famine, and terrible things happen to humankind. But we have been relatively peaceful, at peace, especially since the Second World War. But when this happens, we are reminded that changes which are not always good, that have been happening for many, many centuries in human history. Certain plague and viral infections have killed 1/3 of the human population. Fortunately, it's not that bad at all, but change, good and bad. So everything changes. We all know that. And change doesn't mean it's going to be good. It will not go our way sometimes. On the other hand, change means that this will not last forever. It will change. This too will change. The vaccine is on the way. And so this difficulty will not last long. And realistically, at the end of next year, things should be very, very settled. Well, I have my fingers crossed. I hope the vaccine will work. And from all the indications that it seems to be doing, they seem to have hold lot of promise. And the fourth is, life can be great. It's important that we say this for myself Buddhism and religion, all religions, and especially Buddhism, it's a first-person religion. You're not speaking for everybody, although it applies to everybody, but for me, that life can be great. And even with this pandemic, there are some silver linings, right? Because of this pandemic, and I have hardly left my home except for my daily walks and once a week grocery shopping. So my trips to the work that part-time work that I do, and some of the lectures that I do, they're all online. But silver lining is that I have discovered something that I didn't know about. In the fact that I can relate to all of you in Kauai, thousands of miles away in this way, is a silver lining. And I'm sure that many of you have had to change your lifestyle, right? But in that change of lifestyle, you probably have discovered something new about yourself, and something new about what you can do to pass your time. And for example, I have been able to do translation work and do writings that were not possible because I was too busy going out. And so in anything, when in situations where you think that things are not going your way, there's always something that you can discover. Okay, so that is the first of the three learnings or cultivations. Again, we're talking about three cultivations, and I just finished speaking about one of them, which is wisdom. Life is a bumpy road. Life is interdependent. Life is impermanent. Life can be great. Those are the four marks. There are many wisdoms in Buddhism, but that is one wisdom that I think is easy for many of us to understand and apply to our lives. So the second of the three cultivation is settled mind. This is, walking, exercising, listening to music, etc. It doesn't have to be religious activity. I think that in this pandemic, I take walks almost every day for about an hour through the park, and gives me the kind of the settled mind that I need to put into practice the wisdom that I talked about. So mine, religiously speaking, for us, Nembutsu meditation, Nembutsu, reciting the Nembutsu, and many people in the US and other parts of the world are very much attracted to mindfulness meditation. I think that we as Shin Buddhists, we often say we don't do any meditation, that we shouldn't do meditation. That is not true in my estimation. Shinran practiced Nembutsu contemplation for 20 years, from 9 years old to 29. So it's as a result of having practiced for 20 long years, this contemplation meditation, that he came to realize his Nembutsu, which is the oral recitation, Namandao, Namandao, Namandao. So I suggest and I encourage you to, as often as possible. I'm sure that all of you put your hands together before a meal and say your, express your gratitude. But I encourage you to say Namo Amida Butsu. And if you say Itadakimasu, say it before Itadakimasu. I think it's, as Buddhist, Shin Buddhist, Namo Amida Butsu, Itadakimasu. And I often say, thank you, mommy, or thank you, my wife, for preparing the food, or thank myself when I prepare the food. So, and recently, I've even suggested, doing toilet gash sunan kubose. He talks about gasho to our shoes, because, you know, we take shoes for granted, right? We were stepping our shoes all the time, but without shoes, we can't walk. And so it says, gasho to shoes. But I also say gasho to when we go to the bathroom. And when things come out naturally, then we should be thankful, you know? So when you, what I call toilet gasho. So the fact that we take in from the mouth goes out, that is a sign of health, you know? If you can't do that, you're in trouble, right? So remember, if you can, you know, maybe once a week at least, okay? When you have the opportunity, you say, Namandao. Now, I'm not saying this just to be funny. I think it's a daily practice that is important. Another daily practice is, I'm just gonna have you do for about 2 minutes this, okay? If you can sit up straight, and then like in a meditation, basically throughout Buddhism is essentially the same. You put your, you know, just sit calmly with your back straight. You can close your eyes or you can leave them half open. And would you do that right now? You can have your hands on your lap like this. And then breathe quietly through your nose. Okay, please do that. When different thoughts come up, just let it go and go back to your breathing. Focus in your mind right under your nose. As the breath goes out, it's warm. When it goes in, it's cool. All various thoughts will pop up, but just let it go and just focus on your breathing. Now, this is basically what it's called mindfulness practice. But for we Shin Buddhists, what I do is I breathe in, and then when I breathe out, I say the Nembutsu. Can you try that? You can say it quietly or very low voice. Namanda, namanda. Namanda, namanda, namanda. Namanda, namanda. Okay, so this is something that you could do, you know, whenever you find time, at least once a day. Just a few minutes will be fine. You can do it even when you're sitting in the toilet, and or sitting in your front of your computer, and you get a little tired. You know, just take a break, and you know, just do what we just did, and it will get you to your settled mind. For settled mind, it's also good not to watch too much TV, especially news. I love to watch news, but news, as you know, gives you they're bad reports. They're reports that make you increase your fears and anxiety. So though we cannot stay away from it, but it's good not to be so absorbed in it. Okay, the conduct is a third of the cultivation, acting in accord with wisdom and settled mind that I talked about. So it's, I will think pure and beautiful thoughts, to say pure and beautiful words, and to do pure and beautiful deeds. So can you repeat this part of the golden chain? So 1, 2, 3. I will try to think pure and beautiful thoughts, to say pure and beautiful words, and to do pure and beautiful deeds, knowing that on what I do now depends not only my happiness or our happiness, but that of others. So this one, you know, and this, so conduct is just putting into action what I have just talked about wisdom and settled mind. And we just have to do it and in our daily lives. And then this will complete the three cultivations, three learnings. And as all of you probably know, that Golden Chain was written in Hawaii, in the 1920s and 1930s. So I'm sure you recite this. So please, just since you know this, and by conduct means carrying this out in our daily lives, we will determine my happiness or unhappiness, and that of others. And this one here, the Our Pledge, I'll be covering this later, so I will skip this now. So this concludes the three cultivations as we apply it primarily to the pandemic, but it applies to everything, to the problems that we have now. But it's the basic way we lead our daily lives. So those three things, if you can apply it, it should make a difference towards a happier and more peaceful life. Okay, so this concludes, it's a little over half an hour now. So why don't we, are there any questions? I don't see any, is there any? Reverend Majima, are you gonna give us the questions or?
No questions. I don't believe there's any questions right now, Sensei.
Or any comments?
Yes, I have a comment. Sensei, I'm really enjoying the way you're spreading the use of the Nembutsu and to all aspects of life. The older I get, I've come to believe that there's no time, there has been no time, and there will be no time when there isn't something to be grateful for. And that's been resounding in my head. And it's becoming more and more real. Even like you say, during this pandemic, we think of the law of change as something negative, but change can be positive also. As the vaccines are coming out eventually.
Yes.
So change can be, I guess it's more or less how we paint it.
Well, that's the vertical axis. How we, the horizontal is what happens to us, okay? So please understand that in life, we cannot control what happens to us, everything. Becoming old, getting aging, and eventually death. Those are things that we cannot control. But how we understand that is the vertical part. And that requires cultivation that I just talked about. And as you say, Reverend Kaufman, that gratitude is a very vital and important sentiment and appreciation, or even wisdom, in spite of the difficulties that we have. If you say, well, one way of trying to feel appreciation or gratitude is that, well, it could be worse. I mean, of course, it's bad for a lot of people. 280,000 Americans who have died. It's bad for them and their families. But again, speaking for most of us, it could be worse. There's still food that we can eat, and that's how I felt when this hit. I said, oh, well, I go to the convenience store every day, and it's normal. It's like everything that we had before you can get. And I said, boy, to have food and a roof over our heads, I feel so grateful. And then in a way, it's grateful that this is not affecting the young people more than the old people. You know, can you imagine that the same number of, you know, children were dying? Most of the people who passed on are much older, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that is bad, of course, but in a way, it would be far more difficult for all of us if we had our grandchildren and babies be more
gosh,
affected
yes.
than the adults. So, you know, it could be worse, and so that's another way of kind of you know, feeling a little bit grateful for what, in spite of it all. Yeah.
You know, we have to remember that all throughout this whole pandemic, there have been people working to maintain some sense of normalcy.
Yeah.
You know, and that's boy, that's something to be grateful for.
Yeah, the essential workers and the
Yeah,
and of course the healthcare workers and the stress that they're going through and the hard work and you know,
yes.
and then I think about the hard work and the insights that the scientists who have not discovered but created the vaccine. You know, I thought about, gee, if we didn't have these specialists who can develop the vaccine, where will we be? You know, it's just that we take that for granted. And in the Middle Ages, you know, we had the plague, and half the people in the society died. You know, so
Scary.
it could be worse, and
Can always be worse.
yes, and we see the light at the end of the tunnel now, and thanks again to interdependence, in a sense that we have these, you know, vaccines that that's coming.
That's what strikes me about Buddhism, Sensei. Buddhism is not
Yeah.
only in books. Buddhism is happening in life every day. And everything that happens, you know, you just have to see it and look.
Yeah.
It's not about what's in books, it's what's in life. It is life.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, that is why you know, we have to make effort to practice it. I think some people become you know, lecture junkies. They book junkies. You know,
yeah.
they learn a lot of things. They you know, learn about the doctrines and the subtleties of doctrine, but if you're not, you know, applying it to your life and making a difference in your life and that of others, if you're not a pleasant person to be around, then you're not really practicing Buddhism. So I think that the practice part is, of course, very important. Okay, well, are there any other Q&A?
Yes. There's two questions. Number one, why or how did you determine what is horizontal and what is vertical?
Oh, okay. Horizontal is the everyday life that, you know, it's the objective life that we all experience. You know, you're living in Kauai, I'm living in Japan, but, you know, we have our society, we have our you know, work and school and church. But the vertical is the teachings, Buddhist teachings. I don't know how much clearer I can be. Through the teachings, you learn how to look at what happens in our life. The good example is a pandemic. Pandemic happened on the horizontal level. It happened to everybody. Almost 8 billion people in the world. It's happening to them. It's happening to me. But how you take it. So the example would be that, you know, some people say, why is this happening? It shouldn't happen this way. You know, Buddha or God is punishing us, and this person remains very angry all the time, and they're not, you know, they're kind of being rebellious and they're not helping themselves. So that's an example of how not to be. you're not walking the vertical. Of course, some people don't have the vertical level. They only have the horizontal. But those of us who walk the Buddhist path, along with Christians and Muslims and people who follow true religion, they, I think, are walking the vertical path. It doesn't have to be religious. It can be literature. It can be philosophy. It can be, any teachings that help us to become better able to deal with what happens on the horizontal. I hope that's clear. If things are not clear, you can always email me, and I'll be happy to respond to you. What's the second question?
Yes, where does Shinjin fit in with the vertical and enlightenment?
As I explained, halfway up, let me just go back. Okay, so vertical enlightenment is here, full enlightenment, which means Buddhahood, Samyak Sambodhi in the technical term. Shakyamuni Buddha attained this level, okay? Shinjin, I would say at the level like here, just for, discussion, halfway, and Shinjin is actually the first level of awakening, first level of being an awakened person. If you look at it from a Mahayana standpoint. And so Shinjin would be here, just about here. And as I said before, we cannot become full Buddhas in this life, but it's okay. You don't have to be fully enlightened, completely without greed, hatred, and ignorance. But we can minimize the effects of our defilement or greed, anger, and stupidity if we realize Shinjin awareness. The question is, when do you know you have Shinjin? And that is a $1 million question. We in Jodo Shinshin, the ministers don't tell you you have Shinjin or not. It's ultimately up to you. And you can appreciate it in the way you experience life and how you see life. And it's different for different people. So don't have to compare with others. But as you walk, and as I said, if I may give one definition, is if you have walked this path for certain number of years with sincerity and dedication, that is an expression of Shinjin, in my opinion. That because you have been grasped by the compassion of Amida, that you are motivated to want to learn and to hear the teachings. Chomon. Chomon means to listen to the teachings. Listening to teachings doesn't mean just to listen to what ministers say. Almost listening to the teachings as written in books and seeing on videos and making efforts to understand the Dharma and the Nembutsu. If you feel that yearning and you enjoy it, you want to do it not because someone else says it, then that is a sign that you are embraced, you are on the, at least connected to Shinjin. Okay, I hope that answers you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So as I thought, I'm gonna stop sharing and okay, I'm gonna go to the next one. This, excuse me. Ooh. I'm sure. Okay, I'm gonna be patient, please. Okay, you can see this, right? Okay, jewels and introduction. This is actually a topic of my latest book that I would have talked about had I visited Hawaii, but I have been sharing this and for some time, a few months now, and I'm not going to cover all of it, but just the parts that will apply to this seminar. This is the book. I'll give information to the ministers on Kauai, but and I think they probably already have it. But it's free of charge if your temple or an organization of your temple wants it from the BDK. You know, you've heard of BDK America, Bukkyo Dendo Kyokai. I went with this because they're willing to, make this book available free of charge if you order through an organization. And you can download it free anywhere. And then even if you bought it individually, it's only $6, including shipping. So, you know, I'm not making a cent off of this. I was happy to do it because at this stage in my life, it's not money. It's not, plus you don't make much money from books anyway. And, but I wanted to make it available to especially the young people, youth, scouts, and the young at heart. So young at heart means includes adults, and I know for a fact that this book is good for adults. And what is different about this book is that it's for American Buddhism. I have a chapter 1 and chapter 4 talk specifically about American Buddhism, and I was originally asked to write a book for young people for scouts, because as you know, there is Buddhist scouting, and they needed a book for them to get their awards. But I decided to make it available for young people in general because it's a book about Buddhism for young people living in America. It's not only for young Buddhists, but any young people or any adults who want to know about Buddhism in America. I'm going to skip here. Okay, so I have a lot of humor as well, which is one of the accomplishments that I feel that, as some of you may know, I like especially puns and jokes, and here is this one. So you have a Christian guy carrying a placard, says Jesus is coming, and here's a Buddhist says Buddha here now. You see the contrast? And of course, you know, proper English would be Buddha is here now, but it's making a little fun of maybe Buddhists from Asia who cannot speak English right. But it's okay. You know, we don't get too excited about that. Kind of making fun of ourselves, but what it's telling us is that here Buddhism has become an American religion. It's no longer religion just in Asia, and it's not only for old time, ancient, but it's applicable and relevant here and now. And that's how Buddhism is being accepted in America. Here's the kind of a table of contents. three parts. Legacy part, where I talk about, history, life of the Buddha, history of Buddhism in America. Second part is the teachings, practices with humor and lighthearted stories. So I talk about Four Noble Truths, karma, Eightfold Noble Path, four marks of life that I talked about just earlier, and then different passages. Last section has to do with how to apply in our daily lives. I have chapter 9 are 10 issues and problems that many young people face, like breaking up, romantic relationship, or losing a match, or feeling inferior, losing a grandparent, things of that nature. And the last chapter is all humor, all the humor put together in one chapter. So I'm just gonna highlight some sections of this book. Again, as a part of the trunk and the branches that you should know, this doesn't talk about Shin Buddhism, because it's for all Buddhists. So the title jewels comes from the metaphor of Indra's net of jewels from the Hawaiian or the flower garland tradition. And this one, you've heard this before, and I've talked about it before, that this is the part that expresses interdependence we talked earlier. So this here, we have a net that expands in all four directions. At the eye of each net, there is a jewel. And each one of us is like one of these jewels. So what about this jewel? Well, we are shining. We are as a jewel, we can shine, but we shine because of the light that we receive from the other jewels. Okay? So this jewel here, it's shining because of the light that we receive from the neighboring jewels, and even jewels that you cannot even see here. Of course, the light is less far away. So this is like us. We are able to live, we can breathe, we can have food to eat, we can have the spiritual and mental support of our loved ones from our family members, our friends, our teachers, our church ministers, etc. So this is the nature of who we are. We are blessed by this outer jewel, okay? And I talked about this already, so, and let me just go here. Second jewel is the inner jewel, outer jewel, inner jewel. This one comes from the Lotus Sutra. Stories some of you already know. Here you have two friends. One very wealthy and he's very capable. Other one is not wealthy, and he's not very capable in school, etc. As they graduated from high school, they had a celebration. They spent enjoyable time at his house, and the poor friend, he went to sleep, and the older friend, the richer and more capable friend, had decided to leave and go off on a journey because he had things to do, and he also wanted to let his friend be more on his own, not to depend on him, because he was always depending on the more capable friend. But the capable friend, he decided to sew a jewel in the lining of the poor friend's clothing, and didn't tell him about it, hoping that he would discover it within. So he goes away, the richer friend goes away, the poor friend, he gets up and doesn't see his friend, and he looks for him and can't find him. He keeps looking for him. So he goes off on his own, leading the same kind of very insignificant life without trying to find something worthy in himself, maybe walking that vertical path to bettering himself in a worldly situation, not only religiously. After many years, they meet up all of a sudden, and he was the richer friend, the more capable friend, was surprised to see that his friend was still in ragged clothing, almost like a homeless person. Not that homeless people are bad, but he hadn't made much of himself. So the richer friend, the capable friend, said, "What happened to the jewel that I planted and sold in your clothing?" And he said, "What jewel?" And he checks his clothes, and lo and behold, he finds that jewel deep embedded in his thick clothing, the outer clothing. So all these years, he could have found the jewel and made and used the money that you can get from it to educate himself, or to start a job, or start some kind of business. But he hadn't, because he had not looked within, and had, in a way, this is a metaphor for not having more confidence in who you are, that we have the potential to do better. And in the Buddhist sense, we have the potential to become Buddhas. We have potential to attain Shinjin awareness. But he was always looking only at the horizontal, not at the vertical. So that's the story with, I've added quite a bit of commentary myself. So we have the outer jewel and the inner jewel. And these are, symbols of Buddhism, because, in Buddhism, we like jewels. We have another set of jewels. What are they? It's the Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. 3 treasures, or 3 jewels. So I didn't even talk much about it in this book, but we have the outer jewel that sustains us. We have the inner jewel that represents the potential to become better and attain spiritual liberation. So that is the thematic background, or the foundation of my book. I think we in America like especially the inner jewel, because of the importance of individuality. But we have to balance between the outer jewel and the inner jewel. Okay, and if I may add,
someone went in.
Okay, so the inner jewel actually is Shinjin awareness, Shinjin in Joro Shinjin awakening, or Shinjin realization, Shinjin in trusting, whatever you want to call it. And that is because that jewel within is already there, given to us by Amida. It's already been endowed, but we are too caught up with ourselves to realize it. And here I have it in Japanese. I'm sorry, I didn't have time to do this. I had a friend make this, and this is that horizontal and the vertical line, different. And what is important about this is that I talked about the horizontal and the vertical, but now this one has a circle, right? Circle. And if you read Japanese, you would know this means Buddha, this means Dharmakaya, or the Dharma, the body of truth or Dharma body, Tathagata, Nyorai. This is same as Buddha, and wisdom and compassion, compassion and wisdom. So these are out there beyond beyond the circle. So this is the Jodo Shinshu part. Okay, so horizontal, everyone in the world has it. I mean, that we all live, that close to 8 billion people in the world have this, have our respective horizontal level. And the vertical are those who try to make themselves better, especially seeking to find spiritual liberation or to find deep sense of spirituality, lead a religious life or philosophical life. This is the vertical. So as we progress, we come to realize that we're not alone in that we are embraced in the circle of compassion, circle of the Buddha, Amida Buddha in our case. And that ultimately, rest assured that we are embraced in the circle of compassion. We are not abandoned, not forsaken. We are embraced and not forsaken. Whoever you are in terms of your personality or income or place in life or whatever, we are ultimately embraced unconditionally by the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha. So we are already in the circle. This is the strength of Jodo Shinshu Buddhism. You don't find it so much in Zen Buddhism or other forms of Buddhism. They talk about it, but not to the extent that we do, because our teachings are for ordinary people who lead ordinary lives. Remember that low-hanging fruit that Bishop Matsumoto talked about? And we can reach it because we don't have to climb all the way up to the very top on our own. This is, frankly, it is not possible unless you leave the world and go into a monastery and lead, just concentrate fully on enlightening yourself, awakening yourself. Even then, it's not easy. But Shakyamuni Buddha did, so he is a model, but we can go halfway and realize Shinjin. When you realize that wherever you are, we are already embraced in the circle of compassion. And to that, we say, Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu, Namu Amida Butsu. When the Nembutsu comes out spontaneously, naturally, that is also a sign. You're not calculating to be good or try to be pious, but Nembutsu comes out. That is also a sign of Shinjin. So anyway, I just wanted to share that because if you can take away from this seminar, just remember this this image, okay? And you have the power to determine how you take life, how you take the ups and downs, especially the downs. It's not easy. That's why we need the Sangha to support ourselves, help us. That's why you belong to a temple, because you have people who think the same way, who are aiming for the same goal, and you're trying to support each other. So Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. That's why those jewels are very important. Okay, let me just stop here for any questions or comments.
I do not see any questions at this point.
Oh, okay, no questions. Reverend Kaufman, do you have any comment?
Yes, I come from a Judeo-Christian background, and they use a lot of guilt
Yeah.
in their teachings, you know, and
Hmm.
Buddhism speaks of remorse. Is that correct? It's not the same thing.
Well, yeah. Go ahead. You're talking about guilt and remorse.
Yeah,
Difference between the.
the difference between Buddhism and Christianity.
Let me just. Well, let me use this one then.
Okay.
I think if I can respond to that, I think there is a, you know, in many ways, most religions have much in common, but as Reverend Kaufman pointed out, we don't have God who created the universe and is a judge of our actions. And so often it seems to me that guilt is instilled in us because we are not living up to the standard that is set by God, and we are told by others from outside that you are a sinner. But you know, I mean, I feel reluctant to talk about other religions because we can simplify, you know. So, but from my vantage point, it's not that in Buddhism, if you want to use the word remorse, it's something that you come to realize that you are an imperfect being through your realization, not because someone tells us that you are guilty, but it comes from within, like the jewel within. You come to realize, as Shinran Shonin did, as he walked this path, and he came to realize that through his own experience for himself, he's not talking about anybody else. He's saying, I myself, I Shinran alone, you know, I feel that I am an imperfect human being. I mean, he used words that are even more harsh. You know, he is full of blind passion, bonno. But the fact, what is important is that he came to realize for himself through his experience, and he was speaking only about himself and not judging other people.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not a judgment that we receive from others, but it's something that we come to realize.
Well, that clarifies it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I have
yeah.
2 questions.
Okay.
First question is, what is the role of the Sangha in the pandemic?
Oh. Well, I mean, it can be many things. I think that the Sangha can be a way of supporting each other, both in terms of how we think about, but also, if possible, that the Sangha, other Sangha members will provide, you know, physical support in some ways, in terms of food or going to the hospital, whatever. So I think it's like anything else, like in ordinary time, that when there are people in difficulties, the Sangha is there to support each other. Again, I think that the Sangha also can emphasize the spiritual dimension, the mental dimension, and I think this seminar is exactly that. That, you know, through the sponsorship of the Kawai Honganji Council, you're sponsoring this seminar, which is providing a mental wherewithal, the strength to deal with what is going on, the pandemic. Okay.
Can I move to second question?
Yes.
What would be the best English word to describe Shinjin?
What is the best to? I'm
Best
sorry.
English word to
Ah,
describe Shinjin.
okay. Well, the problem is that I have written one of the books that Reverend Kaufman mentioned. It's all about that. Shinjin is very complex. No one English word will define it adequately. So the most that's why in the Honganji translation they didn't translate it. They left it as Shinjin because it had too many nuances, too many meanings to it. But if you have to, it's been translated as faith, okay? It's been translated as entrusting. So I think entrusting is the dominant translation in English. True entrusting, you probably heard that. But again, that is not adequate because actually I wrote it in that book. There are 4 dimensions, main dimensions to Shinjin. One is entrusting. Second is joy. And I think it includes gratitude there too, joy, gratitude. Third is no doubt. There's no doubt anymore that you are embraced. And the last one is wisdom or realization. Let's call it realization. So these 4, again, entrusting, joy or gratitude, no doubt, and the last one is realization. So it's all 4 of those. But again, the dominant one is entrusting and faith. But I am arguing that we should emphasize more realization. Realization about 2 things. Two things. One is realizing about ourselves, which is that I am an imperfect being. Unless you realize that for yourself, not just in your head, but total body, it's hard to really understand Shinjin. At the same time, realizing the circle of compassion that I talked about, Amida's compassion that is endowed, that we are embraced in this unconditional foundation, which we call Amida's compassion. So realizing those 2 things. The fun way to talk about this is it's actually, it's not in my book because it's Shinshu, but the imperfection of oneself, myself, I call it, well, let me talk about the first one first, and it's funnier that it's, Amida is actually part of ultimate truth. In English, we call it oneness. Oneness, you heard that, right? Oneness, capital oneness. Ichinyo in Chinese, and so we are embraced in oneness, embraced in Amida, okay? But at the same time, we have to realize that we are one mess. One mess. You get it? Oneness, one mess. Just the difference between N and M. I think it's really great. I think I should take out a copyright on this. So Shinjin is to realize that I'm one big mess, but at the same time, I am embraced in oneness. Okay.
先生、ありがとうございます。Thank you very
Okay.
much. And that is
All
all
right.
the question.
Okay, good. Okay. So let's, okay. Oh. Oh, I'm going to wrong side. Okay. I want to share one of the highlights of or characteristics of this book is a sense of humor. And you know this one. Why couldn't the Buddha vacuum under the sofa? Because he had no attachment. This cartoon, all these cartoons are drawn by John Murakami of Hawaii. I tell him the story, and then he drew it, and he did a wonderful job. So, attachment is another English word for bono, or defilement, or gas. You know gas, right? G stands for greed, A for anger, S for stupidity. These are the obstructions that prevent us from realizing the awakening. But anyway, another word for that is attachment. So when you send an email and tell your friend that I have an attachment, but you forget to make the attachment, right? And your friend writes back and says, hey, you said you're going to have an attachment, but there's no attachment. Then you can say, oh, I'm sorry, I was just trying to be a good Buddhist. You get it? So no attachment. I'm actually trying to cover up your mistake by trying to be a good Buddhist. That's not a good thing. Okay. Okay, I just want to show you some photos of American Buddhism. Chapter 1 has to do American Buddhism. There's Dalai Lama receiving a gold. This is really symbolic of the status of Buddhism in America. When I was growing up in California in the late 50s, Buddhism was not very well known. But now, here is a Buddhist monk receiving a gold medal with the president of the US and the head of the Senate leader and the Speaker of the House. I mean, in the late 50s, this was it was unthinkable. So it really goes to show that Buddhism has become very much part of American life, and certainly in Hawaii, but even in California, where I grew up. And so today, do you know what percentage of Buddhists, what percentage of the U.S. population makes up the Buddhists? It's 1%. But actually, people who know about Buddhism, who practice Buddhism, probably close to 10%. People who know something, have been influenced by Buddhism with regard to their religion or spirituality, it's about 10%. And that's been shown in a study that took place about a little over 10 years ago. Here's Steve Jobs, who, when he got married many, many years ago, and this is a Zen Buddhist priest conducting the ceremony. Beastie Boys, Steve Yoke was a Buddhist. Unfortunately, he and Steve Jobs have passed on. Okay, so just second part has to do with the teachings. So I talk about the Four Noble Truths and karma and all that. So basic teachings are all here in written in a simple way. But what is different is that to talk about the Four Noble Truths, I use an example from the Western culture, which is the Aesop tale of the greedy dog. You know the greedy dog story, right? That almost everyone knows the story. So I use this story to talk about how greed can ultimately lead to suffering. So here, the greedy dog takes away the bone from a little puppy, and he's going over, he wants to go to a quiet place to enjoy this bone. Going over the bridge, he looks down and he sees another dog with another bone, a huge bone. So he wants that too because he's greedy, right? So he barks, and what happens to the bone? He drops the bone in the creek, in the river, and he loses that. So he is in suffering. So he brought suffering not only to himself, but to the puppy from which he took the bone. So in trying to make it understandable, I use not a story from Asia, but story from the West. Here's another, this is a really good one too. Buddhism is a religion of awakening, not a religion of belief. So this monk wanted a hot dog, and he pays for the hot dog, but he gives a $20 bill and doesn't get the change back. So he's getting a little antsy, frustrated, but he's a monk, so he has to be, have settled mind, collected mind, right? Even after a few minutes, he doesn't get the change, so he says, well, where is my change? And the vendor says, sir, the change must come from within you. Of course, change means two things, but I think this is really hilarious. Okay, there's another hot dog story before that, but I won't tell you because you probably heard it, and you can read it in the book. So here I talk about 4 marks of life. I used another example from the West, an American story in a book that was really famous called Who Moved My Cheese, and how being able to adjust to change. When the cheese disappeared, Ham and Hall, his Hall here, they resisted. They said, why is the cheese gone? But the mice, they are good Buddhists in a way. They adjust right away, change. So they start looking for the next set of cheese. Whereas Ham and Hall, they stay in the original place and complaining, blaming others. Why is the cheese gone? It's our, it's our privilege. It's our right to have the cheese. So they don't adjust to change. And so they started to have nothing to eat. But Hall decides, well, we can't stay here. So he goes out and looks for the next cheese. He finally finds it. And this is a scene where he finds another station. There's a whole bunch of cheese, even greater than before. And who do you see? You see the mice friends who had already found it earlier. And as you can see, they didn't suffer. They had pot belly. They had a lot to eat. But so this is an example of how, if you live according to the 4 marks of life, you will not suffer needlessly. Part 3 has to do with, as I said, everyday life. So 10 problems, issues, like breaking up of our relationship. So example here, my boyfriend and I have been seeing each other for 1 year now, but he suddenly broke up with me without any warning. I'm devastated. Even though we had some problems, we were trying to work it out. I wish he could have tried harder to make things better. I hear from my friends that he may have found someone else which hurts me even more. Well, something like this, we've all experienced, or virtually everyone. And so I talk about use interdependence, truth of interdependence to respond to this. So again, breaking up our relation, that's the horizontal level. Human relationship, some we can handle, we can change, but most things, you know, we cannot control. But how we respond, which is the vertical, by understanding the truth of interdependence, then you can deal with what happens to us here in a way that does not bring about suffering. So you can read the book to kind of appreciate what I said, and I kind of talked about it already, so I won't do it here. Chapter 10 has to do with question and answers. Like, for example, do you believe in God? When someone asks you, how do you respond? Oh, yes, if God refers to truth and compassion or love, but no, if God is the creator of the universe and the judge of our actions. So this is, you know, one way of responding succinctly to a question. And so I have a whole chapter on these questions that are often asked. The last chapter is on humor, and here's one where this is really simple. Here, guy is hanging on a cliff, which he thinks is 100 yards below. The floor is 100 yards below, so if he fell off, he's gonna die. So he's clinging on for dear life, and Buddha appears. So he says, oh, Buddha, save me, please save me. And the Buddha says, I will, let go. Okay, if you notice, the bottom of the cliff here is actually only 1 yard below. But the Buddha, he knows that. He knows the truth. But the cliffhanger thinks it's 100 yards below. So this is a kind of a symbol of what happens to a lot of us. You know, we make a big fuss about something. You know, I when I used to ride the trains a lot, I used to rush to the train, even though I don't need to. I'm not in a great hurry, and I'm huffing and puffing, and then I say, hey, what's the big deal? You know, I can catch the next train. And in trains in Japan, in Tokyo, they come every 5 minutes. You know, so this is kind of it's an analogy. So, or it's something more serious, like you have an argument with your spouse or your family member or your friend, and you get emotionally worked up because what you think is important, you think it's so important that you cannot let go. You know, you have to kind of argue about it. But if you remember this cartoon, you know, probably it's not a big deal. And sometimes it's good to just let go. And so this is a two-headed bird. The back head was always jealous because the front head was eating all the fruit, all the good, because it was in the front. So he got angry at the front head. So he poisons the front head, gives them poison. Well, what happened? Well, this back head also suffered because they share the same body. One body, two-headed bird. So this is symptomatic of what happens in our world, in our country too, actually. We demonize the other, and we don't realize that we're in the same boat. So I think this is very symbolic. And the relationship in the appendix, relationship between religions. And ultimately, make it short, we are unique, but at the same time, we share the same truth. So we share the same mountain, but we're different peaks. See, if we say we're separate mountains, then we're two separate, but we share the same mountain, but we share the same peaks. Same mountain, this means we're human beings. We have same kinds of problems. We fundamentally have similar common ideas, but we have our uniqueness. We recognize and respect the uniqueness, and we try to cooperate. That is how we relate to other religions. We do not say as Buddhists that we're the only way. Our way or the highway, we don't say that. You know, we can respect others. But unfortunately, some religions, other religions don't say that. And Girl Scouts have these different awards, Padma Award, Metta Award, Karuna Award, Sangha Awards, and I talk about each of them. And then finally, I end with a kind of a reminder to the reader, to especially the young people, to try to realize a life of meaning through Buddhism. That, you know, we have many goals, the objectives in life to especially succeed in the secular world. But it's also very important that we find real meaning in life through Buddhism. And for that, we have to have two things: develop knowledge and conviction. But a lot of times, you know, we don't have enough knowledge about Buddhism. That's why we cannot have confidence talking about religion to other people. So when you have knowledge and apply it to life, you can develop your conviction. So I say to the young people, develop these two elements. Then you can, if you are Buddhist, you can feel proud the fact that you are Buddhist. And lastly is promote peace and Buddhism. I think by promoting Buddhism, not in a, you know, kind of aggressive way or forcing it upon people, but just sharing Buddhism, which will also promote peace. So peace and Buddhism, and also not forget others and forget the everyday life. You know, it's not only good to stay on that vertical. I haven't talked about it very much today, but once you consummate, once you complete and go further up the vertical, you should come back and help the horizontal through your spiritual understanding. So you will naturally promote peace and promote Buddhism and deal with the social issues such as climate change. I think the climate change is the biggest issue that we have. For those of us who are, you know, adults, older adults, you want to impact us, but for our grandchildren and next generation, we really have to handle this. And Buddhism has a teaching of interdependence that gives us a kind of a guideline on how to deal with this. Okay, so let me just stop now before I conclude a little bit later.
Yes. There is a question.
Okay.
I must ask you to go back to the circle with vertical and then horizontal lines. About that slide, left side, outside top quadrant, it says wisdom and compassion in Japanese.
Yeah.
Yes. And lower bottom, Tathagata, right side, top quadrant, Buddha. And what is the lower bottom aspect, the Buddhakaya?
Buddhakaya, called Dharmakaya is the ultimate reality, called Dharmakaya, and it's beyond form, and beyond color. But in order for us to appreciate it, it took form as Amida Buddha, So it's the ultimate form of Amida Buddha. I hope that's understandable. That's how Shinran Shonin talks about Amida Buddha as a way of talking, expressing Dharmakaya, which is fundamentally wisdom and compassion. It's the ultimate reality that wants to liberate and save us all. But in order to make it easy for us to understand, it took the human form of Amida. Okay?
Thank you. That is all from the participants.
Well, it says question answer. It says 4. That's from before, huh? Okay. That's it. That's all inclusive. Okay. All right. Let me conclude with is this Monshu Otaniko, can you see this? Can you, no?
Yes, we can see it.
You can see, okay, good, okay. Okay, I want to conclude by just sharing our pledge, which Monshu Otani Kojun put forth. I'm sure you know about this, but even if you know it, I wanted to just use this as a kind of a conclusion as to our theme of essence and practice of Jodo Shinshu. And so it goes like this. Well, needless to say, you know who the Monshu is, who is the 25th descendant of Shinran Shonin. And he is still a young man in his early 40s. And he wanted to make the Jodo Shinshu teaching easy to understand. And as an initial teaching, he put forth this something like the golden chain. So breaking out of my shell, I will share a warm smile and speaking gentle words, just like the kind Buddha. So, you know, what it says is, you know, it's something that we often hear, but it's hard to practice. And, but I think what's here is important, breaking out of my shell. You know, we think we are, you know, open-minded. We think we are flexible, but many times we have our hard beliefs and we are kind of stubborn. And so we should always keep in mind, not be vigilant, be aware of not to be stuck in your shell. And when you are encountering other people, that greet them with warm smile. And I guess in Hawaii, you already have a wonderful tradition of, you know, aloha spirit. So you probably don't need to worry about it too much. But I think maybe in Japan, they need to, because in Japan, people are not as, they're very good with their friends and people that they know. But if you are just a total stranger, you rarely talk to each other and share warm smile. Okay, next one. Not becoming lost in my greed, anger, and ignorance, I shall think and act with an open mind. just like the calm and peaceful Buddha. So again, open mind is like the shell. Is again not being attached to think always. You know, you have to have conviction, but we have to be open mind. Someone said, open mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's opened. You like that? I like that too. One of the things I learned when I was a minister at the Southern Alameda County Buddhist Church, I learned a lot from the members. And when I was talking about attachment and he said, oh, that's like a parachute. You know, mine works. So mine is like a parachute. It works best when it's opened. Can you imagine a parachute doesn't work? You're in trouble. Okay, so greed, anger, and ignorance. I've been talking about this, you know, and I wanna. We don't have too much time, but greed, anger, and ignorance. We know that they lead to suffering, but I've been using this format called 5 constituent elements or 5 aggregates. In Buddhism, we look at our experiences in it's 5 process of 5 elements. There are 5 senses, emotions, thoughts, response, and consciousness. And whenever you experience anything, this process functions. For example, right now you are watching me and hearing me. So your sense of sight, sense of hearing, through these two, you get some kind of emotion, and it's usually good, bad, or neutral. Hopefully, in this case, it's good, okay? And then you have some thoughts like, well, you know, I guess he's making sense. I'm learning something, I hope. You have thoughts about what you are hearing and seeing through what I'm saying and talking, okay? And then you have a response. This is more like a mental response. Well, I guess I'll stay longer to listen more and not to leave. That's the feeling you get. And then the consciousness this is a little ambiguous, but I call it the decision making. You feel like I want to stay and listen, so you decide. Decision. And also this is important because consciousness is where the later in Buddhist thought, it develops into the unconsciousness, which is a depository for the memories that you have. All the things that you experience, especially the acute memories, it's all stored in the storehouse consciousness. And this impacts the way you feel, even what you sense, and especially how you feel, how you think, and how you respond. So every minute, every second of your life, we're recycling this process. And so Buddhism is to cultivate yourself, train your mind so that when something negative happens, like someone yells at you, you get a bad feeling, right? And then you think, you kind of you judge that person. Oh, he must be he must have had a bad life in the past or childhood, and then you want to respond by arguing with that person or whatever. But if you have like a strong Buddhist consciousness, you're able to break that cycle and not be swayed by it. Let me give you an example, something little. Well, let's do this. I'm gonna show you a picture, and I want you to, look at how your emotion and your thoughts and response are. So what I'm saying is that we need to be more attentive to our inner thoughts, inner mind. We're too much, always out there. But through Buddhism, we look at how our mind functions. If we can catch our negative emotions and thoughts and not let it not react in a negative way, you can prevent arguments, unnecessary suffering. So let me go, not this one, this one. If you just look at this, angry guy blaming you for something, and so how do you feel? What is your thought? What is your reaction? Well, ordinarily I see him, I don't hear him, but the five senses are only but just seeing this face gives me not a good feeling. And the thought, I'll make a judgment. I said, he must have had a bad childhood to react like that. Or, well, I can say more, but I won't because it takes too much time. But we make judgments about people, especially people that are disagreeable, people that you don't like. But Buddhism is also saying that that's your thought. That is just for that moment. That's how you're thinking, and don't get too stuck on it. And so let's go back to here. So if he were the Buddha, he probably with his calm composure and says, "Oh, is there something I can do for you? You seem, somewhat upset. Maybe I can be of help." In a calm demeanor, that probably will calm that person down. But if you are like most of us, very bad emotion, negative, you have judgments, and you feel like you want to yell it back at him, then if you and then make a decision to do so, what will happen? You'll have a big argument. You may even become, violent. So this is just kind of an extreme example, but even with our family members, actually with the pandemic when it started, my wife and I are only ones living together, and our kids are all back in the U.S. and they're all married, and so just the two of us, but she has underlying, physical condition, and I too have a bit of problem, but she is very sensitive about virus, and so she was extremely careful washing everything, and when I failed to do something, she points that out, and so we had a few weeks of adjusting. And so I remember going through and try to apply this in the way I try to deal with the gap, the discrepancy in the seriousness with which we were dealing with this pandemic. And I know I have to, acknowledge and respect her feelings, whereas I have my level of comfort. And so it led to some, disagreements. But by applying this, when she said something that I thought was too extreme, I got a kind of a negative feeling. And then, so my thought is, oh, there she goes again. And then, so I wanted to tell her that, but since I had cultivated myself a little bit better, my consciousness is, oh, don't get into an argument. it's something that I can let go. It's not that important. Or it's not that you accept everything that other person says. You can say it in a nice way. That's the key. You can say it in a nice way, and so that it doesn't lead to an argument. And so this is a example of how to practice, compassion, but not just in a theoretical way, but it gives you a kind of a concrete way. And and in order to be able to do this, you have to engage in that settled mind that we practiced at the beginning, Nembutsu meditation or contemplate, whatever you want. Just call it Nembutsu if you like, and it helps you to look within, be more sensitive, because that is at the heart of the vertical. Okay, so let me just. Well, this one is my cats, my feral cats, stray cats. They come and eat every day in the morning. So this one is easy to handle. If you see this, you have a feeling is very positive. They're cute and they're fluffy and they're my cats, and you feel positive about it. But also good things, you can see it, how it's within. Okay, I'm running out of, I'm over time, so I'm gonna end it here. But let me, the last two verses of our pledge, not putting myself first, I will share in the joy and sadness of others, just like the compassionate Buddha. So someone asked a question about the Sangha, role of Sangha in the pandemic. I will share in the joy and sadness of others. So especially the difficulties that others in the Sangha are experiencing, obviously, this is our pledge as a member of the Sangha. Realizing the gift of life that I have received, I shall strive to live each day to its fullest, like the Buddha who tirelessly works to liberate all. And so after all is said and done, we have to wrestle with the question of what is my life and what has this life given me? What is the meaning of this life? And spiritual quest responds to that. So you are encouraged and to realize that the meaning of the gift of life, this life is a gift. You have been given a chance to live this life and ultimately to attain spiritual liberation, which in Buddhism is the most important gift. And with that gift, I strive to live each day to its fullest with a sense of gratitude, and to do what we can to help others. So this, in a nutshell, is what our Monshu provided for us in a nutshell, how we can lead our lives. So when you put your hands together and in front of your Buddhist altar, I suggest you not only recite the Nembutsu, but recite this pledge, or also the golden chain, or any other important lines that you find valuable to you. So with that, I'd like to end my talk. I don't know, I'm willing to listen, have any questions? Any questions? Yeah.
Yes. One last question from us. Since Shin Buddhism doesn't believe in petitionary prayers, what is the best way to communicate with Amida Buddha as a symbol of ultimate truth?
Well, we don't have to petition to get in touch with our God or ultimate reality or Amida Buddha in our case. Nembutsu is a way to communicate with Amida. In fact, Amida, Namo Amida Butsu, represents Amida, or in some ways, it is Amida. So that when you recite Namo Amida Butsu, Amida is with you. Because name is Amida. That is a sacred name that's been handed for 2,600 years. So that is the ultimate. In fact, it's even better than petitionary prayer, because petitionary prayer, you're reaching out to God, but actually Nembutsu, the Amida has reached out to you and is with you in the name Namo Amida Butsu. So when you recite the Nembutsu, understand that Amida is there with you. Amida is there with you, and embraced in this circle of compassion. So we don't need to. The petition is not necessary to connect with Amida. It's even better. Again, I'm repeating myself, but Amida is with you through the name. In fact, Amida is a name. Amida is there, right there, as you recite the name.
Sensei, thank you very much. This was the last question from us.
Okay, all right. Okay, so I am done on my end. So can we close the Gassho? Namo Amida
Namo Amida Butsu.
Namo Amida
Namo Amida
Namanda
Namandavas, Namandavas, Namandavas,
Namanda. And we can feel Amida right here as we recite Namanda, Namanda.
I have so much to thank you for, Sensei, but this has been a wonderful experience and very informative and very enriching. And it's given us food for thought, and that's very important. Actually, your last diagram, I've been searching for a way to talk about the political division between our society members. And I think you've given me some ideas on how to express that.
Which diagram? The circle one or the
the last
vertical?
one. The last one.
The circle.
One.
With a circle?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So I emphasize the fact that Joro Shinshu, not only the horizontal and the vertical, but it's the circle.
Yeah, circle of life, circle of understanding.
Yes.
Well, Sensei, thank you so much.
Okay,
Please,
well,
enjoy.
all right, so I hope that I can visit Kauai in the near future. As I talked about before, my great-grandfather emigrated to Hawaii.
Oh,
that's our connection to Hawaii. My mother was born in Honolulu. She just passed away at the age of 90, almost 98 in San Francisco. And we're happy to say that we have a grandson, and he will be the 6th generation of a Tanaka family. Has of course our 6 generations, we're not all of us were born in the US, but from great grandfather to my grandson, our grandson, 6th generation. And but I regard myself as a Pacificer. Member of the Pacific.
Very good.
Okay, so thank you and best wishes to all of you. Okay.
Thank you, Sensei. Namanda.
Okay, take care.
Namanda, take care.
Namanda, namanda, namanda.
Namanda, namanda. Oh, that was great. Again, let me thank everybody who's participated in the seminar. Thank you for your questions and thank you for your observance. Reverend Tomo, thank you very much for your work as an engineer. And Miyako Majima Sensei, arigatou gozaimasu. And Mrs. Saiki, thank you, dear.